why don't we move back onto the main topic, okay? Oh, main topic. Can you remember main topic? So this is the case about safety regulators getting involved in investigations. And what happened is a person who worked at the Department of Education in New South Wales was alleged to have done some things wrong, and they received a letter which said, don't come to work tomorrow, you're being investigated and you'll be provided with alternative work. Not surprisingly, the person went home very distressed and nearly took their life. So it's a terrible story. So yeah, incredibly sad. And what happened is the safety regulator, Safe Work New South Wales, turned up and they issued some improvement notices. One was, you got your process wrong, okay? You failed to say what the nature of the allegations were. You failed to deal with the investigation appropriately, quickly, so the person's sitting there worrying about it, that's hopeless, isn't it? There? And secondly, you gave them a job, alternative work, which was nothing to do with their experience and skills, which was hurtful as well. And what the employer said is, psychosocial hazards code and regulations have nothing to do with performance management. They have no place in this at all. And the court, which is the New South Wales Industrial Relations Commission, said, well, actually they do, and upheld the improvement notices. So the fascinating part, and why this is our main topic, is we've had the 4 university cases where the safety regulators got involved in reconstructions, restructuring, where people are going to be laid off, redundancy processes, and intervened in things like improvement notice and stop orders. We've seen Victorian Building Authority case, which is still proceeding, the defence case, which dealt with performance management and termination, leading to people's death. But this is a case which goes even further and looks at how we manage procedurally investigations. And I think what's said in it is really important, because it should remind us about how to investigate. And how to investigate does involve making sure people understand the nature of the allegations against them, making sure you support them, making sure you deal with it quickly, making sure you give them updates. And if you are giving them alternative work, make it respectful work that relates to what their skills and capacity are. Okay, how does that sound? Sounds interesting, doesn't it? It sounds like you're bored. Now the case study was something, because I've been travelling, and we travelled 9 hours in one day, because we didn't stay at Dubbo. We didn't really love staying at Dubbo, so we came all the way through to Canberra.
So 4 plus 4 equals 8 hours.
It's a 9, it's 9, sweet. You slept through most of it. Anyway, so I'm going to do the case study today off the top of my head, okay? And I can show you, they're very short notes, but this is the story. I want you to listen to the story, okay? Basil was a production worker in a manufacturing business. There was a 24-hour manufacturing business, okay? His wife, Beryl, who'd been married to for 25 years, was very unwell, and she required hospitalisation for a while and then care at home. He said to the business, look, I'd work 5 days a week in 8-hour shifts. Can I just work 3 days a week while I'm caring for her, while she gets better over a 3 to 4 month period? And they said, no, look, it places a burden on other people. We can't adjust. We can't do those sort of things. I'm afraid, no, you can't do it. So he tried his very best to work, but he became increasingly distressed and worried about his wife. And his son couldn't change all his hours, and so bit by bit his mental health started to deteriorate. So he took some sick leave so that he could care for her. Okay? And after a period of time, they said, oh, well, look, you're about to use up all your sick leave, and it's simply not good enough that you're doing this. It's starting to cause a burden on the business and cost, and if you take any more sick leave, I'm afraid we're going to terminate your employment. Now that's the case study. Okay, so the question is, were they entitled to make that threat? So the first question is, were they entitled to say, if you take any more sick leave, we're going to terminate your employment? And the answer is no. It's pure general protections code. A person's capacity to take sick leave is unlimited to the extent that they have sick leave, and if it's less than 90 days, you've still got to wait 90 days in any period, 12-month period of employment, before you can proceed to terminate, and you must show at that stage the person's unable to complete the inherent requirements of the job. So the second question is, was it a reasonable, flexible work request? And the answer is, quite clearly, a large manufacturing organisation can get people working casual part-time. It was for a short period of time. It was reasonable to support his wife, and so it was a reasonable, flexible work request, and he should have been successful had he made a proper application to Fair Work Commission, but he didn't. The next question is, well, he made the request, could they have made reasonable adjustments under discrimination law? And the answer is yes, they could have made that, and they didn't. All right. The next thing is, will you have a legitimate workers' compensation claim before they proceed to terminate? And the answer is absolutely, they would definitely have it. The behaviour they did wasn't a reasonable management decision, and so they have it. The next question is, could he just take sick leave and use up his sick leave? And the answer is yes, they can't terminate being on sick leave, like I've explained. And the last question is, was it unsafe what they did? Did they do something which breached safety legislation? They did, that's right. They breached because their duty of care was to do, or the standard of care was to do everything that was reasonably practical. So what was the hazard? He had stresses at home. He needed to be away from work. He had a legal entitlement to be away from work. What was their level of risk if they didn't do that? That was very high. They started to become aware of that because of the start effect of his health. What was the control? It was to allow for the flexible work request, to make the adjustments that were required. And did it make his workplace unsafe? Yes. Yeah, okay. So it's certainly a breach of safety law. Now, if something happened, such as he was to lose his life, or became very, very unwell, their lack of care would suggest that this would be a claim of reckless endangerment, which would also sit for even potentially workplace manslaughter. So I guess what this case study, hurriedly made up, I might add, in the last 2 minutes, shows is that in managing people, safety has a continual hand. But you must know the basics of law around employment law to understand people have entitlements to use their sick leave as long as there is appropriate medical evidence that there are legislative regimes that prevent you terminating someone once they've used up their sick leave and until 90 days in a rolling 12-month period. And that workers' compensation claims will lay where people are mistreated as a result of a health-related issue. So how does that sound?
That sounds. I don't know what it sounds like.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Honey, you're a fantastic job. Give me a hug. Come on, quick. Come on, it can't be that bad. I can. Thank you very much. See you later.
See ya.
Bye-bye.